All right. So with that, we can officially call the meeting to order. I'm going to take an attendance, and I typed up a new tally sheet. Um, Meg,
Yes, sir.
Michael,
Here.
Mary,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Helene,
Here.
Maribel,
Here.
Lauren,
Here.
Sarah,
Here.
and Jay here. All right. Outstanding. So welcome. This is our 2015 meeting where we decide which projects get funded. I don't know what we call that, but that's what we're doing tonight. The first item on our agenda is just to review and approve the minutes from our January 15th and January 22nd meeting. Those were the public presentations. Did everybody have an opportunity to look at those meeting minutes? Were there any questions or comments or concerns with that? They're outstanding as usual. We thank Mary for that. And I'll make sure to get those over to City Council so they can review. Agenda item number 2 is a public comment session. So we had just slotted some time for the public if they wanted to comment on any of these projects prior to both public presentations as well as this meeting. Are there any members of the public that wish to comment on any of the projects at this time? Mary,
Did we just take a vote on the minutes and I missed it?
we didn't. I apologize. Why don't we go back and do that? Yep. Nope. Absolutely. Let me get my thing out. Meg, this is on the meeting minutes. Thank you, Mary. Meg,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes, for the 22nd. I wasn't there for the 15th.
okay. Thank you. Good note. Mary,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Helene,
Yes.
Maribel,
Yes.
Lauren,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
and Jay. Yes. Thank you so much. So yes, public comment. I see one member of the public. I'm not sure if Linda was interested in speaking. She typically is at our meetings. Are there any members of the public that would like to offer a comment on any of the projects? All right. Hearing no comments, I'm going to move on to agenda item number 3, the review of our 2025 available funds. I'll talk a little bit about this if that's all right. It's kind of complicated and I'll try not to drown on too long. Naomi, would you bring up that graphic for us?
I think Meg was going to do
Oh,
that.
yes. Thank you, Meg. Awesome. All right. So as you saw in my email this morning, the total budget that we're going to go with this year is $696,142. That was our budget that we had submitted to City Council. We could have cobbled together the remaining funds from last year and added that to this amount, but those numbers weren't crystal clear confirmed for us. So sort of in a conservative and safe choice, we're going to go with the smaller number and the number that we budgeted for. So as I also kind of outlined a little bit in the email, we ended up having more money come in than we had projected by a significant amount, I think. So once those numbers are clarified, and I think I'd like to talk about the financial situation and finances a lot more in detail at our next meeting. But once that's clarified, we should have somewhere in the range of $175,000 remaining balance to allocate further this year if we wanted to, or really just carry over into FY26. So I just wanted to talk about that. So this year, going with the 696 number and then you subtracting 5% for admin costs, that leaves us with $595 that we can allocate to projects. And then there's a note at the bottom that we need to spend at least 10% on each category. So that 10% would be $66,160. And that just a further note is if we fund any of the historic or any of the recreational projects at all, that will meet that threshold. All three of the affordable housing projects are below that, so we would have to fund two of those in order to surpass the 10%, but we do have the option, of course, of carrying that amount over into a future year. So were there any questions or comments on that? Does Lauren?
So you just said that we have to spend 10%, but we could carry it over. Do we have to spend the 66 or can
Nope.
Okay.
We do not, but that much is allotted from this budget for affordable.
Okay.
So that would have to carry over and be used towards, as I understand it, affordable housing in a future year.
Okay. That makes
But-
sense to me now. Thank you.
Yes. Yep. No, that's a great question, and thank you for clarifying. Any other questions or comments on that?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Michael.
Lauren, by way of an answer through the chair, that's where the legislation was written by the State House, that of all the categories, at least 10% must be spent. And if you don't spend it on a particular category, the 10% of the total budget, you can set aside till next year. That's where the 10% comes from. That's how the original legislature was written and voted on in the State House. So that's where that 10% comes from.
Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you,
Can I
Mike.
clarify, Jay?
Yes, please, Mike. Yep, of course. Yep, of course.
So just one piece is we don't have to spend anything in any particular category. We can just reserve it, right? We could decide we actually really want to be conservative. We have this big project we see coming on the horizon. We want to say no to all of historic and Parks and Rec. We could do it if we wanted to, and then we would just reserve all of that. The category, 10% would go to that, and everything else would go to the general fund, and then we could use it as we want later on.
Thank you so much. Were there any other questions or comments on that component of this evening? Everybody feel good about that? Okay. Agenda item 3B is we are just going to review quickly the scoring rubric and preservation plan goals. Is this? Yeah. Hold on one second. Excuse us. Cute. Awesome. All right. So this is our CPA scoring criteria. We all received this information, and this is what we used as a basis for our votes for the scoring survey that we completed. We had discussed it at a prior meeting and made a slight change, and I think it's pretty straightforward. Were there any questions or comments or thoughts on the scoring rubric at this time? Everybody pretty straightforward on that whole process?
I have a question. Okay, my question is how does project flexibility help improve the program processing?
I'm sorry, can you state your name and address for the record?
Hi, my name is Manu Chopra. I'm from Alexandria, Virginia.
Oh, God.
Yeah, 1 second, please. 1 second.
So,
Mayo?
there's
Mayor,
1 second, please. Thank you so much for visiting our committee. Naomi, are you there?
I'm here, yes,
Can you please remove Manu from the meeting, please?
sure.
All right. Thank you so much. Man who's visited us in the past, I know.
Mhm.
Appreciate we appreciate the visits, but
I
we
guess
don't
we do have a following.
well, if he wants to move from Alexandria, Virginia to Holyoke, Mass, we'll be happy to hear what he has to say. But until then, I think we're going to keep it moving. All right. So I apologize for that slight delay. Were there any other questions or comments on the scoring rubric? All right. And then Naomi, if you could please bring the preservation plan goals up.
I had them ready. Let me see. Here they are. Can you see those?
Mhm.
Perfect. Perfect. So again, this is something for us to keep in mind as we vote this evening, just our goals. I'm not going to read each part of it. I think we've all reviewed this document. If anybody has any questions or comments, now would be on the preservation plan or just thoughts about it. Now would be a great time. Everybody feel good about it?
Mhm.
All right. Moving forward. So we're going to go into the review of the projects, and we're going in order from their how they were voted on by the committee. So we completed the scoring survey over the last few days. I appreciate everybody's patience. I think I probably sent more emails than I wanted to. I hate to bother people, but the results of the survey and the order that we ranked these projects is the order in which we vote. So it's really important. Um, we do have uh, more money in requests than we have money in available to distribute tonight. So, those projects ranked at the bottom are going to be at a disadvantage. So, the way we're going to run the meeting too is Meg is going to keep a running tally of our available funds for us, just like last year. Um, we're starting with the is it 661 number,
Yes.
and we'll go from there. So, our first project, I sent that out at about 5:30. I did wait until the last minute until to try to allow, as many people to participate as possible. So that's why you received it so late, and it should be in your email if you didn't have an opportunity to review it, but I have the list here. So, um, the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to do a brief summary of the project. That'll be the start. I'll describe the cost and some other items surrounding that. We'll have a discussion about that project, and then we will vote on it. We'll have a proposal. We can have a proposal to vote it in full. We can have proposals to vote it partially, and we can have a discussion about that. So just a quick reminder, just please try to be respectful of everybody. This is probably one of the more serious meetings that we have. So I just want to try to keep a positive atmosphere. And with that, we're going to start with our first project, which in our ratings was the Flats Community Building Project, came in first. It's a request for $100,000. It's in the historic category. This project aims to improve accessibility at the Flats Community Building. The project will include the construction of an accessible ramp at the rear entrance, along with a ramped front entrance and a ramp along the side of the building towards Center Street. Additionally, we will make repairs to the stucco exterior walls. So that's our first project on the docket. And again, it's for $100,000 is the request. Under discussion, Mary.
I have it that it's 125. It's only 100?
The flats. Let me double check.
Was the 25,000 an amount that they had gotten from another source? Like Like the whole project was 125? I'm thinking about a different one.
That's
Yep,
correct.
that's exactly right, Helene. So
Okay.
and thank you for that clarification, Mary. It was the total budget for the project is 125, but the total CPA request is 100.
Thank you.
Yep, no, that's a great question. Under discussion, does anybody have any questions or comments on the Flats community building? Any questions or comments? Helene?
Um, I mean, especially because it was rated so highly, I feel like I don't know that there has to be too much discussion. Seems like that's how people felt, but I definitely appreciated, to Mary's point, that this is a project that it's like not the most expensive one, but they did come in with not asking for everything. And I definitely feel like that is really important and to get out to folks who are seeking the funds, to even if there's some expression, look, we looked for something and we couldn't find it, then I rated that higher, even if on the rubric for funding, even if they still were looking for 100%. But I feel like it's a very reasonable ask. It's an extremely um, I mean, to make a community space just accessible to everyone, like that's 100% what we're here for. And, they are not asking for everything, so they've got some skin in the game. So I think we should agree to the full 100, and that's what I think.
Thank you, Helene. Any other questions or comments at this time? I'll offer some if there's none other. I'll just say this. I think it's a great project. I want to support the Flats neighborhood. And what stood out to me during the presentation was the excitement that Nairobi had about her project. When I asked her to, discuss, what would be going on at this community space, she really lit up and she really had a lot to talk about. And she had a lot of examples, very specific examples that they're working on, um, all of which are really important and significant for our city. So I just think, to me, it was, I certainly rated this very highly. I'll say that very clearly. I think it's a good project. I support the Flats neighborhood, and I think we should support it. So I would entertain a motion to, if there are, oh, I apologize. Mary, please.
I move to approve the Flats Community Building for $100,000.
Thank you, Mary. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Motion made and seconded to what's our language, Meg? What do we use? We're recommending? Is that what we're doing? Is that the verb I'm using here? Recommend?
Yes, I think just one thing to maybe say just for the record is that we are making recommendations and council can either agree, can reduce funding of those, or you know, they can't add funding for one that they wanted, but they do have that option. These are just recommendations. Has to be approved by council.
Yes, so we're voting to recommend the Flats Community Building for $100,000. Motion made and seconded. Meg,
Yes.
Michael,
No,
Mary,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Helene,
Yes.
Maribel,
Yes.
Lauren,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
and Jay, yes. So by a vote of 8-1, we have voted to recommend $100,000 for the Flats Community Building. Okay. Meg, would you like to bring up our graphic with an update?
Yeah, I was also just doing the math in my own head. in terms of like how much we have and how many projects we can get through. I think folks just have to be aware of that.
Yep.
Like if we keep going down the line and fully fund every project, we're gonna run out fast. So if folks are okay with like not getting to any of the ones lower than like the fourth project, then you have to start making hard choices or cutting within individual lines.
All right. So our remaining funds are $561,595, and we have met our obligation for 10% of the historic category as well. So our second highest rated project was the Lawrence School improvements. I'm going to read a brief summary of that into the record. Lawrence School chimney and retaining wall restoration is the official title. It's in the historic category for $115,000. The project scope includes the restoration of the chimney by repointing all four sides and resetting any loose corbels. The retaining wall will require repointing the bricks along its length and resetting the cap as needed. Under discussion. Michael.
Basically, Mr. Chairman, I'm not going to vote for this. It's something either the city, the mayor's office, or the school department should take up. As I see our funds, it's how can we affect the whole city? For example, projects like the city hall projects or some of the other projects that the whole city can avail itself to, given the limited, extraordinarily limited funds we have available. And also, this is something the school department or the mayor should be looking into, and not us by definition. And the other thing is I have to question whether it's eligible, because as Stuart Saginaw pointed out, you've already done historical restoration to the building that wasn't historical. So it violates the very qualifications as an item. You can't be half historic and half not. So I just wanted to point that out, that those are my thoughts on it, and I'm not going to vote for it. But anyway.
Thank you, Michael. Any further comments? Lauren.
So I actually want to echo a couple things that Mike said. I'm confused as to why this is a project that came before us when it's school maintenance. I would have assumed that that would have come from the city budget of school maintenance. And it feels like some of these projects should have just been through city budget and not through CPA funds. That's it.
Yep. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Meg?
Oh, no, go ahead, Meg.
I think if we wanted to fund it, we could maybe fund it at a reduced amount. It's not that it's not a worthy project, but I do think that it sets a precedent around us taking on school projects. I'm not sure if the committee wants to set that precedent. I think once you've done it once, you've made clear that it's the policy that you're willing to fund them, and then you will see more. So it's a question of if we want to do that. And I'm very torn about what I think about that, because I think that it suits the preservation goals in the 2018 plan. I've looked at it. It does name schoolyards, for example. This is the front of a school, right? This is the schoolyard. So like I don't think that it's against our preservation plan, but also I'm anxious about setting the precedent when it's new for us to do so, especially when we're heading into some lean and mean years in terms of our capacity.
Absolutely. Mary.
So I feel that it does meet our goals. I heard the historic commission information on it, and it clearly does meet those goals. In terms of setting precedent, yes, it would for us, but it's being done in many other cities. And really, the school department is just like any of these other projects. Why would we fund any of the parks? Those should come under city. Why would we fund the city hall stairs? Those should come under the city. For years, we have funded the stained glass windows. Those should come under the city. So that is not an argument in my mind. When you look at the city and its budget for repairs, it isn't there. Same thing when you look at the school department. It's minuscule compared to all the other things they have to pay for. So I think that that's where we are. And I think that, it would be nice if there were just other things, but we've already said no to a lot of those other things. We don't give historic money to homes. So, we have city projects to deal with. Almost all of these projects are city projects. So I don't know about that. Anyway, I'm voting yes. I wouldn't mind reducing it, say $100,000. But the Lawrence School is a really nice piece of architecture. It's been there for a long time. It should remain. If we don't help to maintain it, are they going to just take it down? Anyway, I'm in favor of this project, and I think it should go for $100,000. The gentleman did say the school department would try to come up with some money some other way if that wasn't fully funded when we asked him.
Yep. And Helene, did I see your hand up prior?
Yep. Actually, I just was gonna say that I am just not gonna vote on this project or any that involve the school department for not because there's an actual conflict, but any appearance of one based on the work that I do outside of this committee. So it is my not voting is not in favor or against. It's just a complete recusal, and I didn't score it either. So I have not factored in.
Yep. Thank you for that, Helene. We appreciate that. Any other questions or comments on the Lawrence School improvement project? All right, I'll offer a couple. I went back and forth on this one. Ultimately, I feel that it doesn't feel like a CPA project to me. It seems technically we could fund it, but it just doesn't seem like the type of thing that the residents of the city were expecting when they voted to increase their taxes with the CPA surcharge. I'm not sure that this project is going to have a big impact on the city. I think that the school department, I like Sean. I think he's been a good partner for the CPA, and I like to work with him, but I just think in this instance, it's not something that I'm in favor of, and I'm going to vote no. I'm going to vote no on it. And that's what I got. Any other questions or comments or concerns on this project? We do have one motion on the floor. Sarah.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not too familiar with this process or anything, but there's been, a lot of comments about, does this project really fit in with the CPA, and is this really eligible? And it was my understanding that there was an eligibility process where applications were removed if they were not considered eligible. And so I guess, is it really fair for us now to look at an application after it was deemed eligible to be submitted and consider, and that was scored pretty highly based on our criteria, and now, kind of backtrack on that and question eligibility and or how well it fits into that? Just kind of a question that I had.
Yeah, I think I think we had an eligibility subcommittee this year that reviewed all of these projects in detail, and they came to the conclusion that it was eligible, that it didn't meet our requirements. And so I would say that it as far as I see it, it is eligible. My concern is more about just the fit with the CPA, and I think what I envision for the CPA. So, but yeah, to clarify, in my estimation, I think that that it is definitely an eligible project, but any other questions or comments? We did have a motion on the floor for Mary to, if I'm not mistaken, to vote to fund for $100,000 rather than the 115. Is there a second on that?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Sarah. All right. So we're gonna have a vote on to fund the Lawrence School improvements for a $100,000 recommendation to the City Council. Meg,
Yes.
Michael,
No,
Mary,
Yes.
Chris,
No.
no, Helene is abstaining.
Mhm.
Thank you. Maribel,
No.
Sarah,
Yes.
Lauren,
Sorry, I forgot to unmute myself. No.
and Jay, no. So by a vote of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to 3, the motion fails. And we are not going to be funding for $100,000. Do we move on, Meg, now to the next one, or do we?
Yeah.
Okay.
Unless someone wants to entertain a different motion of, for example, like 30,000, right? Like somebody else could have a different motion for a different amount.
Yep.
That's what I was thinking, maybe less than 100,000.
You
Less
could make a motion. We can see if it carries.
under discussion. Maribel, did you have a proposal for an amount that you might?
I was thinking like maybe 50,000.
50,000. Okay. Is there a second for $50,000?
I'll second it.
Second by Meg. Okay. All right. So the motion is for Lawrence School to be funded for $50,000, made by Maribel and seconded by Meg. Roll call vote, Meg.
Do we want to have any discussion first?
Yes, we do. Do we want to have a discussion about the 50,000 reduction?
Just if anyone wants to say anything, it's a question of like, is it palatable? Is that people are not willing to fund it at any level? Or is it people feel comfortable reducing it and funding it at a lower level? That's my question.
Any comments on that?
I guess the one, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Sarah. Go ahead.
I guess the one question I would have is, should we have some kind of conversation with Lawrence School to see if, we did fund at a significantly reduced level, if, it was still viable to complete that work. I know that they said they'd try to make up for, any budget shortfalls, but, at what level does it not become feasible?
Yep. Yeah, I mean, Sean kind of gave us I don't want to say a broad answer, but kind of a catch-all that they could try to make up the difference. But I don't know if that's definitive. Meg?
We also have a standard contract term that applicants have 3 years. So first off, someone could decide, I'm just not going to move forward. It doesn't make sense for us. We won't move forward with the contract. That could happen. They could back out. We've had that happen before. And the second thing is they have 3 years. So if they can't pull together the funding in 3 years, then it just returns to the coffers.
Yep. Perfect. Any other questions or comments on that? All right. If hearing none, I'm going to take a roll call vote. Meg?
Sure. Yes.
Yes. Michael?
no,
Mary?
Yes.
Chris?
No.
Helene is going to abstain. Thank you. Sorry, Helene. Maribel?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Lauren?
No.
No. And Jay, yes, I'll vote for it for 50,000. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. By a vote of 5-3, we voted to fund Lawrence School at a reduced amount of $50,000. And I think, yeah. Okay. Thank you, Maribel, for that suggestion. Meg, would you bring our updated tabulation up? Wonderful. Thank you, Meg. So remaining funds should be, I think our remaining funds are 511, 595 now. Perfect. All in the historic category. So interesting. All right. So moving on down the line, our third highest rated project was the GlueTech Park Playground upgrade. This request was for $220,000 by Tom. And it is in the open space and recreation category. So the project narrative is to remove the current play structure and swing set at GlueTech Park and replace it with a new play structure. We will add benches, picnic tables with an umbrella, and trash receptacles. Under discussion. Sarah.
So, I mean, I'll start by saying I think this is an awesome project. Really, really excited about it. My biggest question comes down more to process. I know Tom has indicated that the Parks Department has applied for a $125,000 grant to also fund this project. And, he probably won't find out about that, I think, until the April frame is what was indicated in the application. And so I guess one of the questions I have is, are there other projects in the past that, have been waiting to hear about other grants, and how did those get handled as far as what the CPA had kind of selected for funding for those?
That's a good question. Offhand, I'm not thinking of any examples. Meg, can you recall any? I mean, Wistariahurst does use the Mass Historic funding.
Yeah, I mean, it hasn't happened in the past, but usually it's been with something like stained glass windows where it was such an ongoing project with multiple stages that they would just like use it to kick in one more window than they thought they would be able to do. I think in this case it's tricky. I'm tempted to give them the 150 and say, go find the rest of it. I hope that this match works out, and if not, go find it elsewhere.
Pauline.
Yeah, I also felt like, I mean, I'm very, very passionate about the parks. But I mean, Tom was really discussing how if we had to come at a lower price point, then that would be, there were things that could be done, like we can make it work. I think we should reward those that are applying to us for applying for what seemed like on the nose grants, like what it described. The grant really seems like there's a good chance that we would get it from the and that potentially having, because I think there's a match element to that grant. So like once he gets the news about us, if we give 150, like that, would be potentially very helpful for getting the rest of the money, which is something that I know we've all really felt strongly about, using the CPA money as multiplier, as something that will bring more funds into the city. So I mean, one thing we've done in the past when someone's waiting for another grant that might reduce it is say, we will give up to, the amount they asked for, another amount. But if they get other funds that will reduce it, then they will take less. I think here, to say we would give up to 150, and if the other grant means that that can even be reduced more because of the money that's coming in, then we would just be paying less in the end, and that money would roll over. But it would mean that we're giving this project legs where it could go forward, even if it's not the highest level that he wants to do, and hopefully still can do. I'm not sure if that makes sense, but so that saying we're giving up to 150, but with understanding that if there's other funds that come in that are expected and we're in that, uh, we're in the proposal, then that would be reduced from our end. So that is one way I think it could be handled.
Thank you, Helene. Michael?
Mr. Chairman and fellow committee members, it's a good program. It's a good project. I'm not going to vote for it simply because we don't have enough money for some other projects that I think are more important. I would ask Tommy to resubmit it, well, depending upon how the vote goes, to ask him if he could resubmit it till next year when we'll have a little bit more money than we do now. Yes, it's nice to have something out there in that neck of the woods, since those folks don't really have much, but in terms of city offerings, but because there's a couple, especially for me, the stained glass windows, but there's a couple of other projects that I think are more important. So I'm going to vote no. It's not because I don't like the project, but I think because of the money and the timing of it. I would ask Tommy, based on the vote for this evening, to resubmit it for next year. Then I gladly do to support it. Those are my thoughts on it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Michael. Any other questions or comments about the GluTAC Park Playground upgrade? Mary?
Well, so my hesitation is I can't really quite tell what we would be spending the money on. I do like the idea of maybe reducing the sum, but there were three options, and I have no idea what we would be getting. I'm concerned too about some of the things that were in the pictures. For example, on one of the pictures, there was a sidewalk all the ways around, and I don't think you can do that because I think there's wetlands on the other side of that. I'm not positive, but I'm just concerned that I don't really know what we would be spending the money on. So I guess, I don't know if there's any way of having them come back and say exactly. I don't think there is. So I'll wait and see what the motion is.
Yeah. I could offer some clarity as Tom gave us some options to consider. And I think the most expensive option was $220,000. But I think the option that I favor, that I think is the most straightforward and the best, is the M.E. O'Brien proposal, which was for $158,500. That's the company that I've learned as the chair of this committee is the gold standard of playground equipment. They've been in business the longest. You can get parts, replacement parts, which is a big problem with playground stuff when things break. And I think that would be a reasonable consideration for the committee to fund, not at 220, but at 158,500 would allow us to upgrade that playground, because it is outdated. It's rusted, and it's I don't want to say hazardous, but it's definitely trending in that direction. And I think another way I look at this too is sort of a 2-for-1, because we have a wonderful project there already. The GluTAC Woods Trail is, I don't know how I've preached about this project to anyone who will listen. I just think it was a really great job by the committee. It's just a really nice job by Yoni, and I don't know that many people know about it. It's just I keep telling everyone, and everyone's like, oh, cool, So I think the way I look at this is that by investing in this in our city parks and investing in this project, people will be able to go and enjoy the park, and then also a second CPA project right there. So all of a sudden, it's kind of it's an elevated situation for us. And I think that, I go out there, I've hiked that trail and it's really nice. And I think for families to be able to go and have a nice park there would be greatly appreciated. And I think, we haven't funded much in West Holyoke. So I think that, that weighs into the calculus on this for me. So I think, a consideration might be, and if there were a proposal, we could fund at 158,500 would give us that replacement playground. Helene.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything you said, and I think maybe this year we should do organize a fall walk with CPA at Clotech. We did Earth Day 2 years ago, and it was really fun. And anyway, it's off topic, but the more we promote, the more events, the more cool stuff around these projects, I think is good. I think that totally makes sense. And I think it can also say, I mean, there's still that potential for a grant that would even reduce that more. So we kind of, by doing that, we get a park that, is sturdy, is going to be helpful. But that if more money comes in and that amount can be reduced, then all the better, because then that's more money. So that's the high end, but hopefully we would actually be even paying less towards that. So I mean, I think we could put that into Tom seemed completely fine with that when I had raised it, that it would be the 158 amount. But that if another grant comes in that can pay for some of it, that he would, reduce that accordingly. Of course, we don't know what that is, but more money to us in the, to use for future times doesn't seem like something very controversial. So that's how I would maybe put the motion.
Yep. Meg, did I see your hand up?
Yeah, I was just going back through the application, and I think there's clarity for me around, I know option A is the Emmy O'Brien Playscape, 158 and names in it that they know they can save between $7,000 and $8,000 just out of taking out the old Playscape themselves. So that's why I got to the 150 number. And if they get the grant, then it would go up to the 220 and they would do the second concept. Like that's my understanding of what this would be. And I do think that we normally draft contracts between April and between March and April. And so we may just wait to draft that contract until we know if that grant has come in or not, because I think the clarity too in this committee will come with the contract, because the contract will say exactly which what concept is going to be done and exactly which pieces will happen. So I think the committee can feel good that it's not like we don't know what we're going to get. Like we'll name what we're going to get in the contract, and we don't have to develop it right away. We can wait until we know about the grant.
Yes, thank you. The very well put. Mary.
Will we be naming what's going to go in the contract this evening? Because, for example, I'm very concerned about the rubberized surface as being an option. That was something around $50,000 and would last at the maximum 10 years, but probably less, versus the wood chips, which is about a $1,000 replacement every 2 years. The amount of money doesn't compare very well. I'm also concerned about the walkway. So that's why I would really want to know what we were getting before we voted on it here tonight. Also, in regards to the grant, if we're still talking about the grant that was presented at the night of the presentation, I looked into that. And I think that if you even just do a little Googling here tonight, that is very specific. You have to purchase the materials that the grantor is offering. In other words, you could get the $150,000 off, but then you would have to be purchasing $850,000 worth of equipment. So I think you have to look into that, if that's the grant that we're talking about, the grant that he brought up that night. it acts really more like a coupon. So anyway, that's those are all concerns of mine. I'd want it to be a really specific motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Any other questions or comments? Would anyone offer, Helene?
Yeah, I mean, I guess one of the challenges of this whole process is just kind of what, like, we have the, the time to ask these questions and clarify. And I think we've done a little bit of it tonight in a way that I don't feel like we have in the past, which is we're asking questions that never got asked of the people applying and at the time. And so that feels to me a little, and it's not just this one, but it's, just we're raising things that weren't raised when we had the folks there for that opportunity. And I absolutely am fine with people having difference of opinion or concerns, but it's just sort of it's a hard time now to get some of those things answered. Kind of we have sort of to go on with what we've been presented, and we've certain things, like we've asked questions like the stained glass. We asked, like, what are these numbers, and then they came back and were like, oh yeah, these are completely out of date. So that was, I mean, for me, an example of, okay, like, we're digging in with the folks, but then they have a chance to respond. So I just kind of want to name that because I don't really remember that happening in previous years. And if other people are like, no, that always happens, then that's fine. But it's a little like that's really our opportunity to, I mean, people can still have differences of opinion, but it's just like that's our opportunity to go and get that information because we're questioning at those presentations. So
I think maybe another thing to bring up, and Helene, I thought that was, an excellent point as well. But Mary, I mean, you raised a really important point that, you do need to ensure that, whatever is being, implemented is in line with existing requirements. I think given the proximity of wetlands to that area, is that something that would go through Conservation Commission as well? And, could the Conservation Commission also place certain requirements on, don't put a walkway here, wood chips instead of rubber, something like that? Or is there something, in the process when we put together, because I mean, my understanding from this is we're recommending certain funding. And so, what is the process for putting together a contract, if we were doing that? And even once that contract is put together, there's other oversight that might happen, for example, with Conservation Commission and everything else, right?
Well, I think it's supposed to come as a shovel-ready project, but, we've been lax in the past, so that's where we are now, too. If it was shovel-ready, you would have had those bits in place beforehand. You would have had the details on what kind of a surface you wanted and that kind of thing. But so anyway, we're doing things differently from from a shovel-ready project. So all those things will have to be satisfied at some point.
Yeah, for sure. And if I could comment, I just think Tom is also very Tom's very responsive. If we reach out to Tom, he gets back to us. He's always amenable to working with the CPA. And I think a lot of our projects have open-ended questions going into funding and going into contracts, and under our contract terms discussion, which I'm allotting next meeting to go over. I think a lot of these types of things can be sorted out, and questions can be asked of Tom between now and then, which might offer some clarity. And essentially, is we still have leverage over these questions even if we approve, in my opinion. So,
Is there, I mean, does today all funding have to be approved, or can those discussions happen with Tom? And is there the possibility to, maybe reserve 150,000 to vote on at a next meeting once more information's available? Whether, it would go to that or ultimately something else, or?
Possibly. I'd prefer not to do that though. I think that we have some timelines as well with to get this through city council. We have we are only making recommendations. The city council is the one who puts their final stamp on that, and we do want to get that in as soon as possible. I don't know if Meg, if you want to discuss if that, I saw your hands up. I don't know if that's what you were gonna go to. If you got a second thing, but
Yeah, so just roughly on process, what happens here is like we vote tonight. The goal is to get through all votes tonight, so that we can package everything together. Council doesn't, we had a few years where we would sort of take projects and maybe send two, and then another month send another two, and another month send another two, and council were like, don't do that. Give us like CDGB one slate so that we understand the choices you're making and how it all comes together to impact the city. So as a result, we're trying to package it together. So that's why we have this efficient process that we have here. And I would say if we really don't feel like we can vote for a project, it's okay to say, great project, come back to us next year. Like that's completely okay, right? Like these parks aren't going anywhere. And there's a lot of them that we're going to have to rotate through, over the next 10 to 15 years if the city is able to keep CPA. I feel like, the steps are we have to vote tonight, and then Naomi is going to draft the recommendations, which is like the formal template that says what the recommendations are and which funding accounts the money's coming out of. That will go to council next week. It will be sent to finance. Finance might take it up within like 1 to 3 weeks of that, and then back to council. So already it's like a 6 to 8 week swing, just waiting for our results to see, like our recommendations to see what actually gets approved or not, or reduced. And then from there, Naomi has to have enough time to draft the contracts and get everything settled before we really hit the end of the fiscal year, which is July 1. So that's why we sort of try to move it in the way that we do. The contract subcommittee is myself, Jay Ferreira, and Michael Falsetti. And what happens is the CPA staffer will work with the parameters from the committee. Next time we meet, we'll go over the template for all of the expectations that we put in contracts, and we'll name specific things for each one that we may need to change and diverge from the template. If we have a specific concern or something that we really want to have in there, we'll do that at that point. Naomi will then take all of that, we'll draft the contract, share it with the applicant, do any revisions if needed, and then we'll give it to the subcommittee. We'll meet on Zoom and we'll make any tweaks that we need to make, and then we approve it. So it is a process, and contract development can sometimes take 2 months of sort of back and forth and going back to the city solicitor with a question and getting information and then back to the applicant and then back to the subcommittee. It can take time. And we'd love to have you join it, I'm sure.
Yes, absolutely. So any other discussion on Glow Tech? I believe, Meg, I don't know if you officially made a motion prior. You did not. Okay. Does anyone have a motion on Glow Tech Field?
I'd like to make a motion to recommend funding at 150,000.
Motion made by Sarah to recommend funding for Glow Tech Field project at 150,000. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Helene. Correct. Chart here. All right, on the motion, Meg.
Yes.
Michael?
I'm going to vote no. I would hope, not knowing how the vote goes this evening, but I'd like to see it next year when we have a little bit more money. So I'm going to vote no.
Thank you. Mary?
I think I'm going to vote no.
Chris?
I'm voting no as well.
Helene?
Yes.
Maribel?
I'm voting no. Yeah. No. I would
Sarah?
like to see it next year. Yeah.
Yes.
Lauren?
Yes.
And Jay, yes. So by a vote of 5-3, the
Oh,
committee,
four.
5-4, you're correct. Thank you so much. By a vote of 5-4, very close, the committee has voted to recommend to the city council $150,000 to Glue Tech Field. Very divided on that one. All right. So here. And Meg will bring up our graphic for us. Let me see here. Outstanding. So we've met our obligations for both the open space and historic categories at this point, and we have $361,595 remaining to allocate. Our fourth ranked project, and prior to reading this, I'm just gonna note that I am recusing myself from voting on this project, and I did not vote in the survey either. I have a conflict of interest with the YMCA, and I discussed that at our prior meeting, but I just want to note it again. I'm just going to read the survey and then facilitate conversation, but I won't be voting. The project number 4 in our survey rankings was the Greater Holyoke YMCA pickleball courts. It's in the open space recreation category, and it was the project was requested $130,000. The Greater Holyoke YMCA aims to transform a vacant parking lot into 2 state-of-the-art pickleball courts with a half-court basketball option. Estimated completion of October 2025. Under discussion.
I will just
Okay.
say that people keep asking for pickleball courts. Like across the city, it's the most asked for thing. I know that it's come up in every single park redesign as it's come up that people have said, but where are the pickleball courts that we can play at? And I know that we can handle the MOU in a good way in the way that we've done the Boys and Girls Club playground. And I know that the YMCA understands that they need to have public access. And I think that it would be really exciting for us, for the city, to have a dedicated pickleball court.
Thank you, Meg. Michael?
I echo a little bit more on for adults.
Do you play pickleball, Michael?
No, I don't, because my knees, I'd lost about 5 minutes. I have runner's knees, so that's the end of that. Meg, but I agree with you. I mean, purely for adults only, and I'm speaking for them. They're the taxpayers for the most part. Yeah, I mean, it's a great spot. It's shovel ready. They've got the lighting, they've got the layout, they've got the staff to maintain it and direct it and run it. Yeah, I mean, I got an education on pickleball. I didn't know it was so popular, but it is. And speaking on it, well, I won't be there, but certainly on the other adults of the city whose taxes we're spending, I think they'll enjoy it a lot. So yeah, I'm gonna vote yes.
Wonderful. Lauren?
I don't know that this pertains necessarily to funding or not funding, but isn't there a large pickleball complex that's coming to the mall?
I'm not sure.
Maybe, although I think that one of the differences here is that it will be open and free to the public.
What, it's not being used by specific groups, right? So do we have I wasn't here for this presentation, so maybe somebody can answer this. Do we have an idea of how much time is going to be available to the public?
It's like evenings and weekends, effectively.
And we have that in writing, that it's not going to be used by other groups during those times.
So we're going to develop a memorandum of understanding with them. That was the conversation that we had back and forth with Connor Bevan when he presented. And that was his answer to us. Because I was like, well, I know that you have your, summer groups and your daycare groups there till 5:30. So does that mean that this starts after 5:30, right? So that was the conversation we had, that it would be like that evening chunk and then the weekends.
Okay. I'm glad to hear that that was addressed. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks, Lauren. Great question. Helene.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always a little bit skeptical when we have, anything that's a limitation. Like for me, the parks are, in terms of access to the city, public parks are really like the zenith, right? Because people can go anytime, which is one reason that the Kennedy Park, the Miracle League Park is such a gift, is it is a completely open park to anyone, in Holyoke. And but I really did greatly appreciate the presentation and the thought and reaching out to Tom about doing like clinics and kind of trying to make this a resource that truly would be the city, and thinking through how to do, again, free, it's all free, but how to do reservations for the courts because they'd be popular. Um, and so, and even, they are looking for 100%, but there was a list of groups they had kind of already gone to and hadn't had success. And so that to me says, we're not really the first. It's not just like, oh, write something up and get it from CPA. There is this effort to look for other support and maybe not get it, but then maybe that's why we're the right ones. So I just thought, all those questions were really taken seriously, answered, and it felt really comprehensive. And I felt really, sometimes we don't get as clear answers about when the public can use an area. And so I just felt like that was very well prepared and thoughtful, and just that kind of, what I want to see in when local nonprofits, which I of course want to apply for CPA funding if they have an eligible project. But I just thought that this was a great way to approach it with, Parks and Rec, to just really kind of make it as community, like outward as possible. So, I feel like I can be kind of a skeptic sometimes when these come, and I was really pleasantly, appreciating the thought that went into this application, and I'm quite sold on supporting it.
Thank you, Helene. Any other discussion? All right. Are there any?
Wait a minute.
Mary, please.
Is there any discussion about reducing the amount?
Potentially. Good. Would anyone have any thoughts on that?
Well, I like the project, but we've reduced it on everything else. And we're trying to stretch it so we get down the list. So I'm in favor of reducing it by some.
Okay.
And
would anybody like to submit a recommendation that might be seconded and we might vote on?
I will just say that we have never given the YMCA money. Like we've helped a lot of we've done a lot of city projects. We have not helped the YMCA. Like as an institution in our community. Like they've done everything without coming to us is the first thing that they've come to. They've come to in the past and then decided, nope, actually, we've decided that we're going to cover this out of our own budget, right? And they've done a lot of their own fundraising and a lot of their own work over the years. I don't have an issue with just like supporting them where they're at. I think it's a good ask for a good project, and I don't think it's a lot. And I think they're being really thoughtful about the things that they're taking on, to make this happen outside of the costs that are here. So I think that I'm okay with, funding it for where it is. If we wanted to reduce it a small amount, I could be okay with that, but I actually really wouldn't want to reduce it that much because I think it's already kind of a tight project budget.
Yep. Michael.
Mr. Chairman, I would just like to make a motion, we fully fund it for $130,000.
Okay, motion on the floor to fund the project for $130,000. Is there a second?
A second.
Second by Maribel. Okay. We do a roll call vote, and just a reminder again, I am not going to be voting this time. Meg,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes,
Mary,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Helene,
Yes.
Maribel,
Yes.
Lauren,
Yes.
and Sarah.
Yes.
All right. And I am abstaining. So by a vote of 8-0, we voted to recommend $130,000 be allocated to the Holyoke YMCA pickleball project. Okay, do some more math here. Okay. My math is correct. We should have 231,595 remaining. Is that correct, Meg, by your graphic?
Yep.
Okay. 5 remaining. Okay. Thank you. All right. So our 5th ranked project was 150 East Dwight Street 8th Sister project. It's the tiny home project. One of 2 tiny home projects, but the one that was rated higher. So this is in the affordable housing category, and the request is for $50,000. Project description is an innovative, high-quality tiny house will be delivered to 150 East Dwight Street in the Flats neighborhood. The nearly 650 square foot, 1-bedroom unit is a standalone, net zero tiny house made of high-quality, minimal carbon footprint materials. Named by the students of the UMass Design Build program who designed and built it, the dwelling is called the 8th Sister. One Holyoke CDC will also install a street side garden for the benefit of the occupant and the 14 units in an adjacent building. Just a note here, a special permit for use of this site was granted by the Holyoke Planning Board. Construction is expected to be completed by spring of 2026. Under discussion. Any thoughts on the tiny home? Chris?
I guess I'm just trying to grasp one tiny home in a city of multifamilies all around us. I just can't grasp it at this point. That's all.
Mike? Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I echo what Chris just said. I was never, although it's a worthwhile project, I was never enthralled with a tiny home on Dwight Street or Pine Street. We live in the city is composed of houses and primarily industrial or tenements and that kind of architecture. And these tiny homes just don't blend in with the neighborhoods. They stand out like sore thumbs. Now, maybe some more residential in nature cities and towns like East Hampton or Amherst or Northampton or South Hadley, they may be more attuned to it. But we live in we're a city of industrial housing, for the lack of a better word. And I don't think, well, for monetary reasons, but I don't think I'm not in favor of the architecture itself. It's worthwhile, but perhaps in another community, it would be better suited. But I don't think it's good for Holyoke's way of life. So I'm going to vote no, but anyway.
Thank you. Helene?
Could we also just, for my brain, because things are it's been a really long day, but I know it's not the one we're talking about, and I know it was ranked lower, but the other project is to build a tiny house next to a house that's being built and going to be auctioned off. Is that right?
Yes, that's the other one.
That's the other one. So this is the one that is the standalone. And the other one is this kind of affordable, like a auxiliary unit to a house that's going to be auction, like not auctioned, like raffled. Is that the right word? I feel like, but basically provided at less than market cost to a family by to increase home ownership, and help a family build wealth, which is great. So if it's okay if I talk about that one, and no one else has to talk about it, but I'm just thinking about um, the things that I liked about this project, like both of them, but maybe the second one more, is just kind of, one thing we can be with CPA is a little bit innovative. And I am also not 100% like, there are so like housing crisis in this country and in this city is just like, I mean, it's just horrific. It's just so huge. And I don't know why we don't talk about that all the time rather than like renaming bodies of water. But that's like an area that I feel like right now we can, do something about. And so um, I feel like there is kind of, it may not in the end be something that takes hold, but I know that there is a lot of interest in creating these other units as a way of creating more affordable housing throughout different communities. Holyoke already has a lot of apartments, that's totally true. But the other project is kind of feels a little bit like an experiment, but one that's maybe worth doing, which is saying, here's a private house, and next to us we have a unit that can be rented out. And I also, get educated when I'm here. And I felt like it was really interesting to hear about how One Holyoke has like people that they sell these houses to, how very few people lose the houses, even when there's, COVID and really dark times. And that's because they've been able to get renters to help pay their mortgage and like stay in their housing. And so anyway, I feel like if they're feeling like this is something we want to try and see if it works, um, with all the work they do in the city, I am kind of intrigued by it and feel like it may be really worthwhile, and it might be hard to find other funders, that we can be a little bit more nimble and support affordable housing. So I'm not sure that I made the strongest argument, but I just kind of want to like, I like that idea of this is a new thing we're trying, in terms of increasing affordable housing. And they're not asking to do 20 of them, right? They're doing one. So I might be more inclined for the second project, for that reason. And those are kind of my thoughts, but I would like to support at least one of them.
Thank you, Helene. Michael.
Helene, to answer your question, I'd be hard pressed to see any other city in Western Massachusetts that in the last 5 years that has constructed more affordable housing than the city of Holyoke. It's not just us, but the several nonprofits, Wayfinders and the other ones that put up massive buildings in the last 5 years. I don't see any other city or town that can come close to us in our response for affordable housing. We're the leader in it. Also, the fact that the Holyoke Housing Authority is, as we speak, is putting in 8 duplexes in Ward 2, right by Carlos Vega Park. They're going to be ready to go next year. Those are 8 duplexes. The construction and design is to go into a industrial city. So they'll blend in with the flavor of the neighborhood. They'll blend in, they'll look like they were this, that's how it should have been. The Holyoke Housing Authority is going to do that. I'm not in favor of spending Holyoke taxpayer money on something that's being supplied by nonprofits and also being supplied by the Holyoke Housing Authority. I think no one can compare to us for affordable housing and building it in the last 5 years with all the activity that this committee has funded. No one can compare to us. So, yep. But if the Holyoke Housing Authority is going to put up 8, as we speak right now, we've got the foundations in the ground, 8 duplexes where a person owns one half and rents out the other with federal dollars. I like that better than using local tax dollars to do essentially the same thing. So I'm not in favor of these, either one. It's the taxpayers' money. We don't have a lot in our budget as we speak. And as we speak, the housing authority is doing their own thing. Plus, we have another phase 3 going on, which would be for more rental units through the federal government. The Holyoke Housing Authority does that. They're very expensive, but the 8 duplexes that will be ready next year are designed for like a Ward 2 neighborhood. They'll fit right in, but via the architect and his design, which we've seen already. So, Helene, I think to say that we haven't done enough is not quite accurate. I think no other city in Western Mass has done more than we have.
Yeah, if I could clarify too, I think what Helene was saying is that the need is great. I think,
and we responded.
yeah,
The
no,
city
I agree.
responded.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I think, I'm proud of, and I can tell that you are proud of what Holyoke's done for that issue. I think we typically do more than the surrounding communities and have historically, and I think that we should continue to do so. And I think, yeah, I think Helene was more talking about the need. I mean, we do have a high need, especially in Holyoke. But yeah, absolutely. I'm proud as well of what we've done.
Mr. Chairman, and it's in the United States. Don't just pick on Holyoke.
Yep.
We've done our share. We wouldn't have a crisis if people did this as much low-income housing as the city of Holyoke has.
Because I put my
There
hand
wouldn't
up
be a crisis.
and like before
Yep.
a lot.
Lauren, you're up.
I just want to, like, from a planning perspective, the tiny homes they're solving one person's problem. We're putting taxpayer dollars toward one person's problems. I absolutely agree. I mean, I'm a realtor. I deal with the housing crisis every day. We are in a housing crisis throughout the entire country. And I think that these lots could be used in a different way that aren't just for one person. And we are also, and I mentioned this in the last meeting, in the process of working on the comprehensive plan, trying to figure out how we're going to deal with accessory dwelling units and tiny homes throughout the city. So I feel like these projects are, I've heard this refrain several times tonight of like, this should be I'd love to see these guys come back next year. And I would really love to see this come back next year when we have a better handle on this as a city about how to handle tiny homes and handle ADUs, because I understand what was presented in terms of one of these units being an ADU, but I don't know that it fits the definition of an ADU, because what is it accessory to when they are 2 tiny homes the same size? You need one home to be larger and then have an accessory dwelling unit.
Helene.
That's the second project.
Yeah,
there's a house.
It's not 2 tiny houses.
No,
No, that's not the case.
it's a house and a tiny house.
Right. And that we would be funding the tiny house, but the house is, I believe, already set. Yeah. It's a single family, though. They're not doing a duplex, which is what they've done in the past.
This project also came before planning, so it was in a different iteration when it was in front of planning. So I'm probably getting things.
Yes. It's been a malleable process for that. But yeah.
So I think just kind of one thing on that, I'm definitely in agreement with Helene that this is, maybe not in, the end all be all solution, but one innovative potential solution to the housing crisis that hasn't been thoroughly explored yet. And so I don't necessarily feel that, a tiny home, these projects are specific to one family, because I feel that what this ultimately is a case study and not necessarily, just an affordable housing project. And I'm certainly inclined to really give credence to someone looking at innovative solutions and ultimately, it's always best to kind of do a demonstration project or some initial project to see how things go, to inform how that might be a future solution. And so I guess that's kind of what I see these tiny homes as more case studies to inform how that might go in Holyoke, and really try that out in a real world setting. And I think that, could be a good thing to explore.
Yeah, all due respect, I think that this is something that we're working on in the comprehensive plan and in planning, like in ordinances right now to try and get the rules around this clear. And I think this is a project that is coming before the rules being cleared.
Okay. Any other discussion?
I wanted to ask a question through the chair to Lauren. Um, so I saw this come through ordinance. So what was planning's discussion around approving the site plan for the ADUs that were put on Dwight Street? Like if you could summarize it, it might be helpful for understanding, because I think, we're now being asked to, potentially support more of these. It'd be interested to know, like, what was the argument in the planning board around agreeing to that.
So unfortunately, I was not present for that one meeting.
Okay. I like the idea of the tiny house, and for years, of course, I saw the model that was down when it was on Ray Street. And I will say that I was taken a bit aback when they then put the two on Dwight Street, and it was a way of seeing what it looks like in an established setting where it looks sort of like a gap tooth smile. Because we have, and maybe it's just because I come to a lot of what I love about Holyoke from the lens of historic preservation. I think of, like the facade of a street, the streetscape, and like wanting things to fit the neighborhood that they're in. But also, I know the ADUs are coming and the laws are changing and the guidance is being developed. So it may be that they're here to stay and they'll be here in different ways. Um, but I'm not quite sure if I have that vision for like what that will look like and how we sort of, do our part for the housing crisis. And again, like it might be solving one person's problem in this case, but maybe solving many people's problems long term around creating housing for those people, as well as kind of allowing homes to become more affordable again if there's a rental, capacity there. Um, I see value in it, but I also know there's a lot of other organizations doing this work. So you have planning board, you have ordinance, you also have the Office of Planning and Development. I know that they're actually currently applying themselves with funding that they have to do a study for tiny homes, but also wonder if again, like this is very exciting and experimental. We're trying to figure out where we fit here. And I don't know where we fit here or if we do fit here because there's so many other things happening in other city departments right now. Because I think everyone's trying to figure out how to respond to it. And I don't know if that should fall to CPA.
Yep.
Thank you for saying eloquently what I was trying to say.
Okay. Any other thoughts, questions, comments? I would offer a few. I think there's a new state law, the 2024 Affordable Homes Act, which allows for accessory dwelling units in single family zoning districts. So when I hear that, what that means to me is that I think we're going to see this, whether we like it or not, whether it's historic or not, whether anyone is opposed to it or not, because the state law supersedes our municipal laws. And I look at the CPA in this particular instance, as this particular application, as an opportunity to, be the tip of the spear to learn about this process. We're not putting tiny homes up throughout the entire city. We're putting one tiny home in one lot in the Flats neighborhood. It comes with landscaping. I agree. The other Dwight Street units are not as attractive as we'd like, but this is something that's happening that's above us. And I think, I think we have an opportunity to be kind of first in. The other things is, the cost per square foot is definitely better than some of the other projects. I mean, it is only one unit, but we're spending a relatively small amount compared to the per unit cost of other projects. And then another thing that I'm considering too is One Holyoke has, this isn't just some random organization that's coming in from out of state or out of the area. This is a fundamental community organization in our city. That gives me more confidence and gives me more slack on some of these other concerns. I do support this project. I'm going to vote for it. I think it's an opportunity for us to do something different and to learn from this process and to inform the continued discussion. I think it's a reasonable project. So that's how I feel about it. Any other thoughts or discussions, or I could entertain a motion relative to this application. Would anyone care to make a motion?
So I move to recommend the 150 East Dwight Street tiny home project for $50,000.
Okay, motion on the floor is to recommend the project for $50,000. Is there a second?
Just to clarify, the East of White Street is the one with the single family home, right?
It is not.
Yes.
No, it's the standalone unit. So
Yes.
yeah, the other one is the one with the single family home and an accessory dwelling unit.
Okay.
Do I have a second on Mary's motion?
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
Does this one have approval from planning?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. So this is, to your point, does not fall under the new state law because there's no, as far as I know, it may, but they do have that approval anyway. So, yep.
And is approval from planning granted for the other? I just ask because I am assuming we'll probably fund one, but not the other. So
I don't believe so, but I don't believe that it's needed due to the new state law. But Lauren may override that opinion of mine if she.
I guess that's my other question is if we're only gonna, are we planning on funding multiple housing projects or just one? If this is the only one? Because, yeah.
I know I personally, I really like the projects. I'd like to see both funded, but it definitely sounds like there's a lot of mixed reactions. So it sounds like, if we were going for anything, it might be more palatable for everyone to just go for one.
Yep. Yeah. I would offer that of the two projects, I prefer this project, in fact, but that's just my opinion.
Can you explain what your thoughts? Sorry, I'm very persuadable.
My thoughts on it? Yeah, I just think it's the most ready project. It's the utilities are ready to roll. They're going to be able to come in and get it going. The other project I think has more of a longer runway. I think that's why I prefer this project. And I also prefer I again want to support the Flats neighborhood. So this is in the Flats neighborhood, and I think that's, to me, it's an empty lot that's going to be turned into something nice. I know it doesn't match perfectly, but I think that's just how I feel about it. So yeah, we have a motion on the floor as well, but made by Mary to support it for $50,000. We do not yet have a second.
I'll second Mary's motion.
All right, motion made and seconded to support the 150 East of White Street tiny home project. And let me get my handy scoring sheet ready. All right. Meg.
Yes.
Michael?
No, once again, I can't see using local tax dollars for something like this. The housing authority is putting them up right now in Ward 2.
Yep. Mary?
Yes.
Chris?
You're muted.
Chris? Sorry.
Apologies. No.
No. Helene?
Yes.
Maribel?
Yes.
Lauren?
No.
Sarah?
Yes.
And Jay, yes. 4, 5, 6. By a vote of 6-3, we have voted to recommend $50,000 for the 150 East of White Street tiny home project called the Eighth Sister Project. Okay. Do a little math here. Okay. My math is correct, Meg, and Meg will bring up our graphic shortly. We should have $181,595 remaining to allocate. Outstanding. And we are close, but have not yet made our historic, or I apologize, our affordable housing category commitment, but we are very close. Our next highest ranked project was the other tiny house project. So this is also for $50,000. It's a net zero tiny house, will be delivered to 160 Pine Street, completed on site and added to a home ownership project by One Hoyoke CDC. This will resolve the conditions at an abandoned lot in the downtown area. Under discussion. Mary.
Can I just ask you to clarify what you just said in regards to not meeting our housing?
Yes.
So
Yep.
we have just committed 50. We
Yep.
have to commit 61. So that means $11,000 would be set aside for next year. So in other words, the 61 is going to be, you have to figure that additional 11 would come out of the 181 one way or the other, either tonight or next year. Is that correct?
Correct. If we don't fund any more affordable housing projects, we'll have to carry over, I think it's $16,000 into that category for next year. I think it's 66 per category. Am I correct in that, Naomi? Yes. So, yeah.
Okay,
So
so what that means is that with that money reserved to housing, we have $165,435 left. So if we did not fund any more in the funding housing category, we would have 165,435 for other categories.
Right.
And what Jay said is true, that we still have to commit that additional sum.
Yeah, we have to commit 160, but I'm just saying I removed that from the math already in the number that I gave you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Meg. So that $16,000 is not available for the other projects, only for the housing category projects, essentially, as you could say. But yes, it is a bit complicated. So if anybody gets turned around on the math or anything, please don't hesitate to ask for clarification, because I'll be honest, I'm the chair of this committee and I triple check my numbers back and forth, because it definitely can get confusing. So so is there any discussion on the 160 Pine Street?
I think I
Meg?
might. I initially was really in support of the study, but knowing that there's another group in the city that's currently has funding to do that, I don't think that we should duplicate it. If that somehow that falls apart, that doesn't happen, it's helpful at some other point, and they want to come to us after or later, I think that's something else. But I don't want to potentially duplicate it. And I feel like we've supported the flats building and also one of the tiny homes. I would love to go to talk about the stained glass windows. Like that's the next project on my list. We've already supported the Wisteria Hearst wall to the tune of $250,000, and there's nothing in our budget that gets them anywhere near what they need. Because what they need is so much that I just don't think it's helpful to talk about the wall.
Yep. Feline.
So are we not going to discuss 160
No, we are.
Pine Street?
I thought we sort of had in the context of the last one. My apologies.
No.
Okay. No, I mean, I was kind of going to say that was also, like I had said, sort of what I wanted to say. Just the piece that's interesting to me just is, um, a way for the family, whoever gets the house, to create income. So the apartment is affordable for whoever rents it, and then the house becomes more affordable for the family. Um, Again, a little bit different, but I just, because Michael kind of was directing some things to me previously, I just wanted to have the chance to respond about the issues, which is I wasn't really trying to disparage anything going on in Holyoke, just how big a issue it is. And CPA was, part of CPA's mission is to support affordable housing, and that it's taxpayer money, and it's great that other things are going on, but I think it's fair for us to have these conversations and have discussion about the proposals that come before us. I it's there's just it's a any complicated problem has like so many different facets, and it's just interesting where just to hear about, okay, we can get one of these done for quickly and for not as much money, and that sometimes bigger projects take longer, and then that just there's all those complications. And so I feel like people who are doing this work in many different spheres, and I think it's really really great, to Lauren's point, and working on planning to have a bigger picture view of what this should look like. So I just I think it's lots of good work. And I just want to just be clear that there was nothing kind of that, because there's a housing crisis, it's because people in Holyoke haven't been, doing what the best they can and making the issue. It's still such a big problem, but it's wonderful to live in a community where people care about that. And there's been a lot invested and a lot of organizing. So I just wanted to respond to that. And then I guess I don't have too much more to say about the second tiny house that I haven't already said.
Yep. No, thank you, Helene. And I agree. I'm also very proud of the work that Holyoke's done in that on that issue. I think we really do lead the region in that, and I'm proud of that. And I think I'm glad that we've discussed that. Were there any other questions or comments related to the 160 Pine Street project? All right, I'll offer a couple of things. I mean, like I said, I favored the one project. I think the way I look at it is to do one tiny home will be something that we can learn from, and that's something that we'll be able to share that process with others. And I think the one is good for now. I think there's still a lot going on. I know Lauren's the planning board is working on some stuff. Ordinance committee is working on stuff, and the CPA will be able to offer their some useful real information based on our prior funding. And I think that that's where we should stay for now. I think we can let this process play out a little bit more, and certainly something that we can continue in future cycles. But my vote and my opinion is that I'm not going to vote for this project. I'd like to I'm starting to look at it more big picture. I'd like to save a little bit for the other projects, and so I'm not going to be voting for this. But I do think it's a great project, and I do very much like the concept of building wealth, and these accessory dwelling units as a way to kind of breathe life into our city and support people and being successful. So any other questions or comments, or might we have a motion about it?
I'll make a motion to recommend funding at 0 for the other tiny home and the tiny home study.
Second.
Is that how we do it, or?
Well, I'd like to.
Fund?
I think we could, but I think if possible, I'd like to at least have a separate discussion about the study and just read that into the record and have a process. I think we probably could cobble them together if we wanted, but might I offer a friendly amendment where we just vote to not fund do we need to take a vote not to fund something, or would we just move on? Is there any?
I think I don't know for sure, but I think the process is that you should be throwing out a motion. And then if it doesn't get a second, well, then at least you have the record that a motion was made in regards to this. It wasn't just passed over on the agenda. So, or if you get a second and then you get your votes. But Megan, do you happen to know if that would be the correct process?
In the past, we've only made positive motions, and then at a certain point, you just don't, no one's made a positive motion. And
Yep.
so that's the end.
I know, but you make a motion though. Either way, you make a
Yeah.
motion.
Well, I'll make a motion then for 160 Pine.
Okay. Is there for the 50,000, Helene?
Yes.
Okay, motion made by Helene to support the project for $50,000. Is there a second?
I'm hearing crickets.
I'm sorry, Helene, there is not a second. So, does anyone have another positive recommendation to make? And if not, we will move past this project with zero funding. I don't hear any. So at this time, I'm going to conclude that we are not in support of this project, and we'll move forward to our next agenda item. So our money situation remains the same. I don't know. Do we want to bring the graphic up again, Meg? What do you think? I think we're good on that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we still remain at the same funding availability. So our next project, finishing seventh in our rankings, is the Wisteriahurst Retaining Wall Phase 2. So this is in the historic category, and the request is for $350,000. So the city of Holyoke is requesting $350,000 in additional funds to repair the deteriorating stone retaining wall on Pine Street at Wisteriahurst Museum. In FY24, the city secured $264,000 from CPA and $75,000 from the Massachusetts Historic Commission to restore approximately 150 feet of failing wall along Pine Street. This request seeks funding to rehabilitate the next 150-foot section of failing wall on Pine Street as part of the phase restoration of the full 440-foot long wall. One note I added is that there were no qualified bidders for phase 1. We did discuss that at our prior meeting, and I actually they are, as Michael actually, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Michael, but I think you were suggesting at our last meeting that they should adjust the bid and parameters, and they did do that to try to still meet the standards that they're required, but to try to allow for more bidders. I don't know if they've done that, but that is the plan. So, any discussion on Wisteriahurst Retaining Wall Phase 2?
I guess my thoughts on that are just, they've been awarded for phase 1 and have not yet been able to, get someone to even successfully bid on the project. I think it's important to see phase 1 at least go into more of a level of successful completion before looking to fund phase 2. My vote, at this point would be to not fund this project.
Thank you, Sarah. Any other discussion? Michael.
Mr. Chairman, it's just my apprehensions. This was, believe it or not, this was my first request to fully fund it. And the why is because I'm afraid of lawyers, as I said last year. If this wall should come down on a little boy or girl or on an adult, the city and the mayor should be, I'm sure, is aware of this, is the city council. We're going to be in a lot of trouble if somebody gets hurt and these walls come down. You'd have to cut off the, well, anyway, for the legal process is bad enough. And with the liability to that's what I'm worried about, is the liability to the city. If these walls should come crumbling down someday and hurt somebody, this is peanuts compared to what the legal fees are going to be and the awards of the plaintiff. So that's what it's got nothing to do with anything other than my fear of lawyers. That's why I wanted this thing fully put to bed once and for all. And if we don't, we're just, again, for all of us, especially the mayor and the city council, it's really a tough situation, and we better pray and hope that some of these walls, if God forbid that they do come down, they don't hurt somebody. because then we're really going to be in a lot of trouble. This is peanuts. Our budgets are peanuts compared to what the legal process will entail and the liability the city will have to take on. I know it's dramatic and I've got a sense of drama about this thing, but I'm really worried about it. Guys, I'm really apprehensive about this. I know we don't have the money to fully do it, but really, I think the mayor and the city council should really give this some serious thought. $165,000 is a third of what they need. So I don't think it's making a lot of difference. We might as well just not fund it and wait, hopefully till next year, when we have a little bit more money and they get their planning act together a little better. But I think it's something I'm worried about, but you guys, you're on your own. But I'd have to say $165,000 is not going to get you much, unfortunately.
Yep. Chris, I saw Chris's hand.
Yeah, I'm muted. Okay, sorry. I just want to abstain. I am actually on the WISD board of directors. Just want to say that.
Thank you, Chris. Meg.
I agree with you, Michael. I just, they need a source of funding way larger than what we can provide, right? Like this only finishes Pine Street. There's 3 more, sections of this wall. The whole wall needs to be done, right? Like the first wall was the hair, like the harbinger, right? Like the canary in the coal mine, like it's all gonna start happening. And so I just think, yeah, it feels like throwing like, pennies at like a much larger problem, and they need a real comprehensive plan for how they're gonna fund it. Because I think like this feels more like I don't know. It's like the bucket you keep when you're camping next to the fire. You're like, well, let's just handle this right now and this right now. And it's like that CPA will never have enough money to be able to fully fund the wall. And so I don't think that they can rely on us. I think that the mayor and the council has to come up with a comprehensive plan. Unfortunately, I wish that what we had was enough.
Any other comments? I would just agree. I think, we've supported WISD every year. Megan's doing great work over there. I was always happy to work with them and to continue to support them as they improve and grow and get out into the community more. To me, it just seems like this issue is a bit beyond our ability to fix as much as we'd want to. I'm not sure that the people want 60% of our budget every year going to a wall for the next 4 or 5 years, unfortunately. So, and we're pretty low on our funding anyway. So, it is what it is. Helene.
Just just kind of one thing, which is that if there was like a big comprehensive plan to address the 400 feet of wall, right? And this is another 100-foot sliver. And there was like, even if it was maybe less than 350, but another 2, but that really made the difference and brought in other funding. If that money, I could see it, growing and attracting more money, then I'm very, very excited about that. This project, it was, the previous one they did have that mass historic money come in. Here they're asking for the full amount from CPA. So I just want to, I guess, be on the record saying very excited to help with the wall in the future, but if there's more of a plan where we can see how that money could potentially be used to draw in other money and other funds, and be a part of it, but that realistically, I would agree with what Mike said.
Yep. Any other questions or comments? All right. Are there any positive proposals for the Wisteria Hearst project?
Well, I think I have to make a motion just to make the point. I'm not really sure, but I'm going to make a motion that we fund the Wisteria Hearst retaining wall at whatever amount we have left, which is
65,435.
Yeah.
Okay. Motion on the floor is that Mary by Mary is to fund the Wisteria Hearst Wall for a reduced amount of $165,435. Is there a second? Hearing none, the motion fails to proceed.
I just think we have to do that. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
but
no, I understand. Yeah, as a matter of process, and I'm glad to get it on the record as well. Thank you, Mary. I think that's great. It's my first meeting too of doing this, so I was a little nervous going in on the details. So I appreciate all these little conversations and supports. So I think we can move forward on that from that proposal. The next on our rankings was the tiny house survey and policy report. This is in the affordable housing category. Approval would put us as meeting our 10% threshold for affordable housing. One Holyoke CDC will procure a consultant and deliver targeted housing needs assessment relative to the construction of tiny homes in for Massachusetts Affordable Homes Act. The assessment will include community engagement in preparing the report and will be available to the public upon its completion. A note that I made in addition is that the estimated completion would be March of 2026. Under discussion. Michael.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not for this. This is, as I said before, this is something that the mayor and the city council should be, or the planning board. It's a city policy that you're referring to. And city policy should be decided by the mayor and the city council and its subcommittee or committees, not separate groups having their separate study and say, this is how things should be done. I'm not for this. It's a waste of money. That's why you have a mayor and a city council and a planning board, quite frankly. That's their job. And they're to get funding. And they're to debate it and discuss it and then arrive at a plan. That's their job. I could come up with this. You and I could form a company and study sidewalks and do a survey and publish it. I mean, so what? I mean, but again, to me, it's the mayor and the city council, the planning board. This is their bailiwick. This is what they should be doing. And if they are, God bless them. I hope they come up with a good plan. It's a waste of taxpayers' money as far as I'm concerned.
Chris.
Meg, you had said this is already in the works, the plan possibly, or with another board?
The Office of Community Development is in, steps to secure funding for a very similar study.
Thank you.
Lauren?
I just wanted to reiterate that this is a conversation that's happening on the comprehensive board level, or the comprehensive plan level, and that there are other projects already in the works, and I do not support it.
Okay.
For those reasons.
Thank you. Any other perspectives? Okay. I'll offer one. I would agree with Michael, Lauren. I just feel like this is something that should come from the city. And it seems like it is. It seems like those wheels are in motion. However that ends up merging together between planning and ordinance and however else, it seems like they are on the case, and it does seem most appropriate for it to come from them rather than somebody outside the city. So I think that does make sense. Any other questions or comments on this application? All right. Would anyone like to put forward a recommendation for the tiny house study? Hearing no positive recommendations, shall we move forward to the next agenda item?
Yes.
Okay. So just for the record, the committee has not indicated its support for this project. Our final project of the night, and we are officially in my longest meeting I've chaired. I do try to keep it as fast as possible. It's 8:03. We're moving now. Is the stained glass windows. So this is in the historic category. So because of our prior decisions, we have a remaining balance of $165,435, if I'm not mistaken, that we could potentially allot to this project. So this is, like I said, in the historic category. The original request was for $210,000. That has been altered. And during the public presentation, we had asked about the quotes, and so that number has been increased to $250,000. Project summary is this project is to complete the fifth and last phase of the City Hall stained glass window restoration project to fully restore the historic stained glass windows in the City Hall ballroom. At present time, the remaining windows to be restored and reinstalled have been placed in storage, and plexiglass has been installed in their place. I did make a note when Mira submitted her updated budget, and Michael, I did see your hand, and I apologize. I will go to you next. I asked her to break down the proposal because it is for multiple windows to give the committee some opportunity to consider different options. So in light of the fact that we have less money than the request, I'll just read those to the committee so everybody understands. So windows 1 and 5, those are the two big ones. The two remaining big windows is $150,000. Window 13, one of the smaller windows, is $40,000. And then windows 6 and 7 combined are $40,000. There's also a professional consultation. I don't know if you call it a fee cost of $20,000. Would anybody like me to reread those numbers? Okay.
I would, please.
Yep. So Mary, Mary who does our minutes as well. Windows 1 and 5 are $150,000. Thank you, Meg. Window 13 is $40,000. Windows 6 and 7 are $40,000. And then there's a professional consultation is $20,000. So that is how you get to the 250 number. That's the breakdown of it. And Meg has brought up some pictures for us of those windows. That's either 1 or 5, Meg, if I'm not mistaken.
So this is 5. The first one I showed was 1.
Yep.
This is 6 and 7.
6 and 7.
And what's the other one?
13.
All right. There's a lot of windows in here, aren't there?
There are.
And the exciting part is that we've done almost all of them, right? The ones that we're going past are the ones that we've already restored.
Pretty much, Megan, you're right.
Yep.
And this is you said 13, Jay?
13, yes.
So this is 13.
Yep. Oh, perfect. Beautiful. Beautiful. So under discussion, I did see Michael's hand first.
Yeah, Mary, are you all set with?
Thank you for the numbers. I am.
Okay. Well, Mr. Chairman, this is my first selection. To finally put this baby to bed once and for all is worth noting. I don't ask me why, but I thought I remembered Dan Soskovich when he was an alderman talking about this and how it needed to be restored. And that was a long time ago. And we're within shouting distance, if you will, of finally restoring all the stained glass windows. So I'm in favor of fully funding this and the balance out of next year's budget to put it away that we can finally say with pride, the CPA fully funded the restoration of the stained glass windows. And if you've seen them, which I know all of us have, what a difference in the hall. It absolutely glows with these new stained glass windows, as we all know they would. So it's been a while, but we're approaching the finish line, and I would like to like I said, I'd like to make a motion after discussion of the $165,435 to go for the restoration for probably 1 and 5, and the balance till next year for the 13, 6, and 7. And finally, we'll have break out the champagne. We'll be finished with the stained glass windows restoration.
Any other comments? Mary?
Okay, 20,000 was for the consultant. Is that for this year, or will there also be a bill another time? I would imagine it has to do with, the person that does all of this work must, also have some other expenses. So, is that, you think they're going to be charged for that if they don't do, a second time, if they don't do them all? Anyway, just is the 16,000 over the 150,000, is that going to cover the consultant?
Yeah, and I would think that I think that it likely would, but that if it didn't, the DPW would be welcome to try to make up that difference themselves, or we could work something out. But I would say that would fit if we're doing if they end up doing a prorated amount, it would be about appropriate if we did the 150 for Windows 1 and 5, and then another 15 for the consultation, or to carry over into next year, either or, essentially. That would be my thought on it. Meg?
Yeah, they'll do what they do with it, right? I think actually part of the thing that we need to figure out as a committee is if we're partially funding, are we very much saying, no, we mean Windows 1 and 5? Or are we saying we're giving you $165,000 towards this project at your will? Use it as effectively as you can. Do what you can the most with it, right? Like, because I think there is a difference there, and we should be clear in whatever our funding recommendation is for.
Yep. Absolutely.
That's something where we can, kind of say we'll fund at 165. Can you come back to us and say what the best bang for your buck is, and then address that in the contract? That might be what I would be inclined to do, just kind of let them say what they think might be the best as they're managing it.
We may want to have some clarity to council. Like, we have to give them enough that they know what they're voting on.
Okay, that makes sense.
I would suggest, my opinion is that we should say we want those big windows done, and you can use the balance for the consult and towards the other windows, because those are the primary windows, the big ones. The other ones are important too, and they're beautiful. Window 13 is stunning, but those are the less viewed ones. Those don't get as much foot traffic as the big ones. So I think I don't think my opinion is that we should state this money is for Windows 1 and 5. I think that we can make that statement, and I think that we should, and I think that frankly that they'll agree with us anyway. So I think we'll be good with that. Any other thoughts on that? Mike, I did see your hand up. I don't know if your
Well,
concern
Mr.
was
Chairman,
addressed.
it was waiting for you, actually. If there are no other comments from anyone, I would like to make a motion now to approve the $165,000 and $435 for Windows 1 and 5. The balance could be towards the fellow that the guy or gal they're paying to do the work. And then next year we can refund it and put the baby to bed once and for all. That's my motion.
Yep. Michael's motion, and that I think reflects our discussion, was to recommend the stained glass windows for 165, 435, which is our available remaining balance, specifically for Windows 1 and 4, professional consultation with the balance allowed to be carried over into addressing the remaining 3 windows.
Mr. Chairman, it's Windows 1 and 5.
1 and 5. Yes. What did I say? Did I say 6 and 7? Yes. Windows 1 and 5.
Right.
Yes.
Second.
Second. Chris, second by Chris. Motion on the floor. which I won't repeat because it takes a long time. Mary?
Yeah, I'm going to ask you to repeat it though, because Michael's motion is way different from yours, Jay. Because Michael's motion includes something for next year in regards to the remaining windows. And I don't know that we can do that here. I think you have to deal with what you have for the 165, 435. I get the business about Windows 1 and 5, but tell me about the remaining money again. And I don't think we can say what we're going to do next year.
Well, sure we can. Why can't we?
Well,
So right now you can say the remaining windows we're promising to fund?
No, we're promising for them to do their job. I said fully fund 1 and 5. The balance going to paying that architect.
Period. Leave it there.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Perfect. On the motion, let me find my checklist here. 165. Meg,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Helene,
No.
Maribel,
Yes, I guess. Yes.
Lauren,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Jay, yes. By a motion of 8-1, we've voted to recommend the stained glass for 165 along with the parameters that we outlined. And that concludes our FY25 recommendation meeting. Well, our recommendation portion of the meeting. So, did anyone have any other concerns or questions or clarifications needed, or can we wrap this baby up? Feel good about it? Okay. So our final point is old business. I just put this in every meeting just in case we need to talk about some stuff. I have nothing that is so urgent that it needs to be talked about right now at 8:16. So I'll just be in contact in the next few weeks about this process. It is an intensive process, and Meg is going to be taking the lead on a lot of those things, and we'll keep everybody updated. And our next meeting will be the second, as typical, the second Wednesday of March. Let's just make sure that's not on St. Patrick's Day or anything like that. It would be March 12th at 6 p.m.
I want to say last year, I'm pretty sure we had this meeting on Valentine's Day. So,
We
you
did.
you got to
We
be
did.
hardcore for CPA.
Wow.
I think you're right. Yeah.
Oh, we did. Yeah, I look back at them. So we do not need to take a vote to end the meeting, but thank you all for your good work tonight. I think
Bye.
I apologize. Naomi, yes, please.
I'm sorry, I don't want to delay. I just wanted to thank you guys. I watched last year's to prep for this, and this is all very new to me. I've only been on the ask side of grants. It's interesting to hear the funders go, oh, they can find other money. But anyway, I am just so impressed by the level of discussion and the detail and the respect and the ability to express very different points of view. And you guys are really impressing me, and I just wanted to share that. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Naomi. I'll end with this. I did also rewatch the last meeting, and it was the worst because I had to listen to the sound of my voice for 2 hours, and it was just the worst. So you learned a lot. And seriously though, thank you for good work tonight, and enjoy the rest of the evening. And we'll be in touch with more details.
Bye.
I'll send
Bye.
an email
Thank you.
summarizing. Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Okay.